This is Julie Thompson with a KGNC special interview with Colonel Elwin Hart. A World War II veteran, he served beside Private First Class Elmer Mathies Jr., the Hereford hometown hero who was finally brought home this week after more than 70 years. So tell me about Private Mathies. I understand you called him Rabbit?
I do. His nickname was Rabbit, and I don't know for sure how he got it. I think he had a little bit of prominent front teeth or something. And he was a small guy, too. He was only 5'3".
So Rabbit's parents signed for him to be enlisted when he was just 17. When did you first meet him?
Well, we joined the 2nd Battalion 8th Marines in the fall of 41. We both went through boot camp in San Diego, and he was 2 months ahead of me. And we were in the same platoon. We waited ashore from the same landing craft. We spent 2 years going from Camp Elliott to Samoa, to Guadalcanal, to New Zealand, to Tarawa, where he, of course, got killed. And we were all in the same unit that whole time. Went through the same field exercises and hikes and drills and dealing with the equipment each of us worked with. Him and the telephone and the switchboard operation, and laying wire lines, repairing wire lines that people had cut out to use for clotheslines and vehicles to run over, and climbing hills with wire reels on his back straight up and down those hills. He had a tough job. He did it well. I enlisted right after graduation from high school at the ripe old age of 15. After I got my high school graduation, and joined the Marine Corps 3 days after I graduated in May of 41. So we met in the platoon. We didn't work in the same section. He was wire, I was radio. So we didn't have real close contact with each other, just knew each other as a sort of thing.
You were 15?
I was, but I was going to be 16 in 5 days. How about that?
I can't imagine being that age and choosing to go to war.
Well, I grew up fast. I made it 33 years, so I got commissioned in the start of the Korean War, and had done 9 years enlisted. I was a master sergeant, and then I got commissioned, and I retired as a colonel in 1974. I've been retired longer than I was in, would you believe, 42 years? They're still paying me, by God.
What was your friendship like with Rabbit? Can you tell me about his personality?
He was a pleasant guy, always with a smile on his face, and anytime he's around a group of guys, their laughter always started after he was with them for a little bit. He's just one of those guys who was happy. He was a happy individual, and I remember his face. In fact, I never knew his name until about maybe a couple of years ago, last year, that I found out what his name was. Another nonprofit outfit had a bunch of pictures of guys that had been in my outfit, and this Rick Stone Foundation, I don't know exactly where they are. The head of that, Rick Stone, had sent me pictures to identify, and the second picture he sent me was Rabbit, and that happened to be Elmer Mathies Jr. And that's the first time I knew his name. Wow. And then following that, I tried to find out relatives, and eventually did that through a convoluted affair, and got in touch with his sister, Mary Jo Hobson, from Plano, Texas. And we've been in touch ever since. I think the first contact with her was last July the 4th. I called her the morning of July the 4th. And I had gotten in touch with her through her sister-in-law, who had initially gotten in contact. That was not her sister-in-law. I guess maybe it was. Yeah, it'd been her sister-in-law, Margaret Mathies.
Now, tell me about how they found him. Where did they actually find his remains?
Oh, they found him on the island of Tarawa, where he was buried in November 1943, right after the battle. The battle was over on the 23rd of November, 43, and several of the chaplains and other folks stayed behind and buried there were, I think, over 500 buried, if I don't recall. Out of the 1,100 were killed. He was one of those that was in a cemetery with, I think it was 35 or 36 of them in that same gravesite. It's actually a trench dug out by a bulldozer, and then they laid them in head to toe in their body bags and covered back up and marked it with a gravesite number and with a list of those that were in it. And that particular cemetery got moved once, I am told. I learned, and it was lost for years and years. And Mark Noah and his team, this past summer, they found that gravesite and discovered the remains of not only Rabbit, but I think 35 other Marines in it, including a Medal of Honor winner named Bonnyman, first lieutenant, named Bonnyman, back from Knoxville, Tennessee. We attended his funeral last September, and it was quite an elaborate affair, and about 300 people in attendance in a gorgeous cemetery overlooking the Smoky Mountains. And then Rabbit was then found, and he's been brought back, and it's taken about a year to go through all the processes of DNA and that sort of thing in preparation for bringing him home. So he was brought home actually by the aircraft from Pearl Harbor. They had an escort all the way down from by the Oklahoma State Patrol and Texas line. The Texas State Patrol picked him, escorted him the rest of the way to Hereford. Now, as far as Rabbit goes, I'm going to give the eulogy in the church on Saturday. That's tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to telling about it best I can about my memory of Rabbit. And he and I were in the same platoon, but we're in different sections. He was a wireman. I was a radio operator.
I know you were with him when he was shot and killed. Can you tell me about the day he died?
That was D-Day, yeah. He had just gone out on a wire mission, which he had volunteered for with his wire chief, Sergeant Dick Hogue from Texas. Dick was, and he had said, "We've got to get some lines into regiment because they haven't laid any to us." He said, "I think they're having trouble getting ashore," and that was true. And so he had asked for a volunteer, and Rabbit jumped up and said, "I'll go with you, Sergeant." And so they jumped up and left the foxhole. It wasn't a foxhole; it was a big enclosure. It was I call a mortar pit, and they took off on for a good hour, as best I remember. And when they came back, Dick jumped into the hole and started over toward me where I was operating my radio set. And he said, "Well, we made it." And all of a sudden, he looked back, and Rabbit was still sitting up on the edge with his feet dangling down into the opening space. And he yelled, "Rabbit!" And just as he yelled, we heard a shot ring out, and it hit Rabbit right in the heart. He fell to the floor, and he was dead when he hit the floor. And Dick ran over to him and started trying to resuscitate and get him artificial respiration, and no avail. He was gone when he hit the deck, and Dick was pretty well broken up. I think he was one of his favorite wiremen, and we had to put him up on the outside. That was on D-Day, and he laid up on the outside of the dugout for the 3 days we were there. So all the people in the dugout, we had half a dozen or 8 or so in there with us wiremen, and no radio operators because both my radio operators were down. I was by myself on the radio. They all ran out with their rifles, and they started shooting at the 3 remaining palm trees that still had foliage on them, and they riddled them all with every round of ammunition we had in the bunker. And we never heard any rifle fire after that. I think Rabbit was the last casualty from that sniper. That was when it happened, how it happened.
So the Battle of Tarawa was the first American offensive in the South Pacific, and it was the first time in the war that we faced serious Japanese opposition. Did you and Rabbit have any idea what you were in for that day?
Well, yeah, we were pretty well told that we would be facing fierce opposition. It was pretty well fortified. It had been pretty heavy naval gunfire and aircraft support, bombing and that sort of thing for sometime before the 20th. And on the 20th, it was going on while we were waiting ashore. We had to wait ashore because they thought that landing craft would get hung up on a coral reef that surrounded the thing. We waded in about 600 yards through water that was up to my chin at least, and I was 5'9", as I remember, at that time. And I was having trouble keeping my nose above water. I don't know how in the devil he made it, but he did. And he was in my bunker. We were in an abandoned mortar pit, which was 2 enclosures on each side. They were log there, about 10 by 10, each one of them. The back one was covered, and front one was open where the mortar had been set up, the Japanese mortar. We were one of the assault battalions. We were 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, attached to the 2nd Marine Regiment. They had 2 of the battalions of the 2nd Marine Regiment on the right. We were the left battalion, and 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines had been attached to them, primarily, I think, because of the reputation of our battalion commander, Major Jungle Jim Crow, who was a fierce warrior, and they believed that he would be the perfect one to lead that assault battalion. So we landed right behind him because he got impatient that there were too many people piling up on the beach between the water and the seawall, which was only about, 20 yards, 30 yards inland. And so he decided to go and land. We landed probably at least a half hour earlier than we should have. And a lot of barbed wire entanglements, and a lot of the guys were hung up on that, didn't make it. But it was a pretty exciting time.
Thank you so much for talking to us, Colonel. I know we're all happy to celebrate the return of this hometown hero.
Yeah.
Julie Thompson, KGNC News.